Welcome to the Fine Print, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Caleb Teskey, and today I am joined by independent governor candidate here in Vermont, Kevin Hoyt. Kevin, thank you so much for being here today, man.
Thanks for having me, Caleb. I'm excited to get the word out. Having a hard time in mainstream media, so hats off to you guys, and thanks for giving everybody a fair chance.
And now, before we get into anything serious, I always ask my new guests to share a 5-minute life story with us. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your background, please?
Sure. Well, again, I'm a native Vermonter, born and raised right here in Bennington. In fact, my 5 times great grandfather Harry was the first free Hoyt. Him and his father David fought against England. So we've called these mountain homes, my family, um, since the early 1600s, a long time before it was called Vermont or the United States of America. Me, Kevin Hoyt, as a person, I guess my adult career started in engineering as a technical draftsman, structural steel detailer, and project manager in that industry. And I did that for about a decade. And then I crossed over into television, conservation, actually. So I started conservation programs all over the world. I've been blessed with world travel and basically hosted and produced outdoor television for the last 3 decades. So I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. But I got a pretty good resume, I guess, as far as background.
Mm. Now, Kevin, you mentioned right off the bat that something about the rest of the media here in Vermont, and I know you've been trying to get some debates here. How do you feel like you've been treated by the Vermont media outlets here?
Well, exactly how I thought I was going to be treated, because I ran in 2020 and nobody ever heard of me then either. Literally, that you don't get to pick the candidates as a Vermont citizen, the media does. And we have that both audio and in writing from WCAX and Vermont Digger. Essentially, we had a debate lined up about a week ago, and Governor Scott, it was all set up around him. We were ready to go. And once I got in, within an hour, Governor Scott dropped out.
And that was the
Then
public access debate that I saw a little bit of.
it was. And then at the end, an hour before the debate, Brenda Siegel dropped out. So it was literally just me and Peter Duval. And if you watch the debate, I think you'll understand why Phil and Brenda don't want to debate me.
Who was
They don't
the
want to get my name out.
who was the moderator of that debate?
I forgot the gentleman's name. I should know. He's been in it forever too. I've seen him before. I've worked with him before through cable access. Big shout out to public access TV and radio too. Those
He
guys are
seemed like a
super
pretty
hilarious.
reasonable guy.
Yeah, I think he was fair. And again, per the Communications Act of 1934, the Communications Commission, both state and federal law, we have equal broadcast time. Some will argue the legality there, but just ethically, I mean, I believe all candidates. There's only 5 of us running for governor. I believe you guys, as citizens, should hear from all 5 candidates. Unfortunately, your top two, your top Republican and your top Democrat, don't agree with me. They're running and basically refuse to debate me, as far as I can tell. And the media is complicit. Again, they won't. Tomorrow, or the 28th, Vermont Digger is having another debate. They've had them before with Governor Scott and Brenda Siegel, but nobody else is invited. And I just, I don't think that's right. I think that's part of the cheat. I think it starts right at the very beginning. You guys don't know who your candidates are, and that's a shame.
And now, can you tell us what it takes to get on the ballot to be a governor's candidate here in Vermont?
Sure. Well, I mean, basically you just got to submit all your paperwork, right? Make sure you're qualified, you're a resident, and you're able to run, tax returns, those type things. And yeah, I had to get 500 signatures, which on purpose. We got a lot of them from Burlington just because I wanted to hit home. And we included enough extra. So basically they couldn't say that I wasn't involved this year. But
So you got all your signatures.
I did. I'm listed on the Secretary of State, right? I am an official candidate. I will be on the November ballot if we have elections. It's another rabbit hole. But yeah, I'm there. The problem is, again, you won't see my name in Vermont Digger, or you won't see my name on WCAX. They're not even listing me as a candidate yet. And that's part of, again, the optics. Look what's happening, guys. People are paying attention this time around. So I hope people see that. I don't think that's fair.
And is all your paperwork, has everything been submitted up to this point?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm submitted.
So
I'm in.
you are
I'm
officially
on the site.
you're officially a candidate.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Hmm.
I've been for a while. In fact, I gave these guys my press release in May. They still haven't done anything. And again, the gentleman I debated, Peter Duvall, he ran as a Republican, so he started getting headline news as a candidate, and I think it was May, all the way until August when he lost the primary. He ran as a Republican, and
And that
now
was
they're
the other.
allowing him an extended version, right? He's running as an independent now also. So he's going to get, and yeah, here we are a month away from elections, and you guys don't even know who I am yet. They
And
haven't
that
even
was the other
listed me.
gentleman that you were sitting next to during that debate.
Right? The Republican that's now, rooting for the Democrat, who literally in public said he's not going to win. Maybe he
Now,
should
Kevin,
toss his vote in for me then.
can you tell us why you've chosen to run as an independent, please?
Well, I tried to run in 2020 as a Republican, and they basically wouldn't allow me then either to avoid debate. And that sounds impossible, but that's all documented. And, it's so incredible how I started to run. Again, like most people watching this, I successfully avoided religion and politics my whole life. I ran from it. But then I got, I needed a home to come back to. I found my dream career a long time ago, but I didn't know if I could afford to live in the state that I love with the people that I love. I was being taxed to death. I'm a huge two-way guy. We're going to talk about guns a little later, I
We
think.
sure are.
I was tired of losing rights and freedoms and sick of watching my friends and neighbors suffer. So my best attribute is I'm not a politician. I've never been a lawyer or a banker. I'm just a regular Vermonter, which I think is very, very important. We don't have a lot of Vermonters in Vermont office. So I think it comes down to fight or flight, bro. Like you know, historically Vermonters don't make good runners. So I threw my hat in the ring in 2018 as House Representative. I got my butt handed to me by a guy from Chicago. That in turn forced an election audit where I believe we can prove 60 to 70% fraud, trace it back at least to 1975. I was 5 years old. And even better than that, now we have the cover up by the Vermont Secretary of State and the Bennington Board of Civil Authority. We released 500 names in a county of 5,500 people, and that was the A's and half the B's. And then the cover up consists of two documents, one from James Condos, the Vermont Secretary of State. The other one's meeting minutes from the Bennington Board of Civil Authority, basically saying nobody ever looked at any of it. They never looked at any of the election fraud. In fact, we don't even do our ballots. We don't handle our ballots here in Vermont State. The Vermont Secretary of State never touches a ballot. They run out of Salem, New Hampshire. It's LHS Management, who is currently being sued by the New Hampshire Elections Integrity Group, along with the New Hampshire Secretary of State and the state of New Hampshire
So
themselves.
this company handles the ballots from Vermont. They do the counting or what?
They do everything, right? They issue the ballots. Everything goes through
Wow.
Dominion. And it always falls
Don't you
back on
think
your
that's something that should be handled in Vermont?
I would think so personally. And again, this is a big part of this system. And again, it says foreign owned company if you look at LHS, and it's not just foreign, as in if someone outside of Vermont State or someone outside of New Hampshire. This is actually a foreign owned company. They're a subsidiary of Dominion. And Congress has already passed laws saying we can't subpoena anybody from Dominion, but that's changing. They're being subpoenaed now, and looks like Dominion's in a lot of trouble again. New Hampshire has already filed for the 2022 elections, right? They've already put that paperwork in. It's called the New Hampshire Elections Integrity Group. And I believe I'm going to file here in Vermont State based on that also, just so we can hold all the evidence.
Now, let me ask you this, Kevin. What was it that really sort of made you decide to get involved in politics here in Vermont?
Well, again, I successfully avoided it, but I think everything comes back to politics. And it was my firearm freedoms, to be honest. I've always, in the outdoors too. Again, I'm a humanitarian, a lifelong conservationist, an environmentalist. I think that's part of being a Vermonter, to be honest. That's part of our core values. These outdoor natural renewable resources, right? These are our homes, these landscapes, these mountains. We don't really have a lot of manufacturing and development yet. We're going to talk about that too. But we've got this. Look at it outside. It's gorgeous. So that's travel and tourism. I think that's another huge weak link for Vermont State.
Well, okay, so I brought you. I'd like to dig into a bit of your platform, and it seems like the natural first place to start is with the gun rights. So I'd
Sure.
like to hear your thoughts on that. I know recently, in the not too distant past, we've seen a ban on large capacity magazines, and just recently now they've extended the waiting period for purchasing a firearm from 72 hours to 7 days. Let's start getting your thoughts on the gun rights issues, please.
Sure. Well, if you value your Second Amendment rights here in Vermont State, I think I'm the only choice. And we've seen that before. You know, Phil has proved I voted for Phil Scott a long time ago because
Really,
he told me he was going to protect my gun rights, and he
really,
lied. Right.
wow.
I feel infringed, and I'll leave it at that. You know, shall not be infringed is crystal clear to me. And if you're advocating for any kind of gun control, especially more gun control at this point, you're advocating for higher crime rates. I don't know how anybody can do that. Anytime you put a restriction or a ban on honest, law-abiding citizens, crime rates go up. So I am anti-crime rates, right? I want to keep them as low as we can. So I believe in safe, responsible gun ownership, and I think Vermont is a perfect example of that. We never had any crime. We never had any problem with anything until, you know, BLM and gun control showed up from Chicago.
Hmm.
Right now, look at our crime rates. It's incredible. I don't even recognize my own town. You know, Bennington's in a lot of trouble, but it's not just Bennington. It's everywhere. We're looking at, you know, we're going to talk about opioids later too. You know, there's incredible an amount of triggers out there for your everyday person who's working just to survive. They're going paycheck by paycheck. It's tough, you know, for the regular guy, the regular Vermonter. You know, Vermont's a great state. Just Vermonters can't afford to stay here anymore, and that's a crying shame.
So, particularly as it pertains to the large capacity magazine ban, what do you think they intended to accomplish with that measure?
It's just, again, they're stroking the back of people's neck. I've heard the same thing as far as, you know, assault weapons, right? We need to ban assault weapons. And if people, it wasn't even that long ago, we did that during the Reagan administration for a full decade, right? And on top of that, the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Criminal Investigation, the FBI, they did a multi-million-dollar comprehensive study, and we saved zero lives, zero. It didn't do anything for mass shootings. It did nothing, right? So all these laws, again, you know, they use fear tactics to scare the people. If you want the God's honest truth, we should be celebrating on how safe guns are. We have over 300 million guns in the country, you know, over 1 trillion rounds of ammunition. And if you look at gun deaths in general, you're talking about 33,000 gun deaths a year. It's climbing. About 22,000 of them are suicide, leaves about 10,000 deaths a year. Okay. And you've watched television. A lot of bad guys get shot by police. A lot of bad guys get shot by law abiding citizens defending themselves. Right. So I'm going to round that number off about 5,000 deaths a year. It's unfortunate. It's heartbreaking. We're never going to be able to get rid of crazy. Right. It's always going to be here. So that's an incredible number. 5,000, 300 million guns. We have 5,000 homicides, right, or accidental shootings a year. And by comparison, in that same time period, those same guns stop up to 3 million. It's between 2 and 3 million violent encounters, violent crimes. If you want gun control, what are you going to say to those 2 million victims that use guns to stop a violent attack? And without those guns, what would those numbers look like? That's another 3 million rapes, homicides. Again, I am anti-crime. I like the idea of defending yourselves and the right to defend yourself. My personal opinion, I don't need a piece of paper or any other man to tell me I have the right to defend myself. And you don't either, Caleb, or anybody watching this. You have the right to self-defense for
So,
you and your
do
loved
you
ones.
feel in a way like this is just sort of a symbolic measure that doesn't really help the problem?
Absolutely. And I'll give you, I mean, another one is they banned them for, you know, under 21. You can't have a gun now. So I've got, you know, an 18-year-old Marine that's about to go overseas and get shot at, and we give him a gun then, he can shoot at people. Oh, well, he's back here, he can't defend his family. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Can't buy a cigarette or cannabis.
Right. It's absolutely, you know, it's foolish. Everything's kind of kind of backwards. But, and again, if we catch a kid, let's say during deer season, an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid out there in the woods of Vermont, that's legal. He's not doing anything wrong, right? If I wanted to go do something horrible as an 18 or 19-year-old kid, I don't have to purchase that. I can get it out of dad's cabinet. I can steal it. I can do, I mean, you can't stop crazy. If they, if they don't have access to a gun, they're going to build a bomb. And if they don't know how to build a bomb, they're going to rent a truck for $29 and they're going to run you down on the street. We can't stop, crazy people. I wish we could, but it's a part of our society, just like violence. I wish I could take it away. But we can
And this
fight
is
it a lot
something,
better than we are.
this is something I've said a lot of times, Kevin, because I recognize that there's, like nobody wants to see a school shooting. Nobody wants, that shit is horrible.
Right.
And my cousin was shot 13 times by the state police. He's now in a wheelchair
Wow.
and yeah, he's paralyzed, so like that's horrible. But what is the solution? Because obviously it seems like with the number of firearms in America, taking people's guns away. Like if it was up to me, nobody anywhere would have any guns and we just punch it out like the old days, But it seems like we're way beyond that point, and we're way past the point of being able to
people compare this to Japan all the time because they have no gun. It's a little tiny island. It's really controlled, and there's never been any guns, and they don't have any guns, so they have very low gun. They have mass stabbings, right? The Romans talked about banning assault weapons, and they're talking about swords and spears, and it doesn't work. Anytime, anywhere in history that we've done this, it backfires. It doesn't work. The opposite is true. The more access that honest people have to firearms, the lower the crime rate is. And I'll repeat that Vermont proved that forever until the last, decade or maybe two. We've seen this really ramp up, and it's all sorts of policies. This is a very, complex issue and answer. As far as schools go, I think it's simple. I've been pushing for 19 years. I'd like to see armed teachers. Now we have a group of teachers that are both trained to teach and concealed carry, and that's through the Firearm Education Institute, the International Firearm Hunter Education. We can't call it hunter education anymore because hunting is a bad term too, but I'd love to call it conservation camp. And again, this is a proven way to reduce gun violence. Nobody has to give up any rights or freedoms. I'd like to see hunter education mandated in every school in Vermont state. We could do it over a quarter, so they go to gym for half a year, they get a quarter of sex education, a quarter of conservation class. We're talking about basic first aid, basic survival, the science behind conservation and how all that works, and then gun safety. And we can really expand. That's a 14-hour course. And now we're talking about a whole quarter. So we could talk about civil rights and what happens when you encounter law enforcement, good, bad, or ugly. But gun safety, again, is the big thing. And this has been proven historically to reduce gun violence. So now every Vermonter, when they graduated, they'd be trained to operate a gun. And it doesn't mean they don't have to hunt. They don't have to operate a gun. They don't have to be a gun owner. That's a personal choice. And we're not trying to push that on anybody. But don't you want your kids to have this basic education? The question should be, how come we're not teaching this to our kids? We used to, but we don't anymore. And education reform is another big one here. And with the hunter education,
before you get there, let me put you on the spot a little here, Kevin.
Sure, let's hit it.
So what would you say to the parent of somebody who lost a child in a shooting or something like that?
Right. I like the teachers actually to say, hey, we're not trained. We're not trained. I don't want to carry a gun, right? Well, okay, let's get to the situation though. Let's get to where the school's on lockdown and you got your door boarded up and you're in there with 30 of our kids and the intruder kicks the door in. Do you want a gun now? Because I want you to have a gun. I want you to have the ability to defend yourself. And to be honest, gun-free zones are the foolish part. We should have signs outside to say any attempts to harm our children will be met with deadly force. And I'd simply give the teachers their gun rights back, their freedoms. If you want to concealed carry, then do that. And the only one that should know is the teacher and the principal. So as the next armed attacker at a school, I like the unknown, right? Even when you put a security officer here in Bennington, we have a security officer at the door. Just like if I was going to rob a bank, the first thing I'm going to do is take out the security. So we've just put a great big bullseye on that officer to start with, right? But I like the unknown factor. Mr. Hoyt, the wood shop teacher, he's probably packing, but you don't know about little Miss Smith, the math teacher. who's got one in their purse. And the idea that our kids are defenseless. All these tragedies, they're always heartbreaking. And my thoughts and prayers go out to everybody that's lost. But I just as soon have somebody, how do all of these tragedies end? It's usually with a gun, right, in the hands of a good guy.
Do
So
you worry? Do you worry at all about some of those teachers maybe snapping on the, like, I've been around kids before. Sometimes they drive me fucking nuts. Do you worry about maybe the teachers
there's
being a
dangers here,
threat?
Caleb.
Hmm?
There's no, there's dangers at, no matter how we do this, we're never going to be able to protect ourselves from ourselves, unfortunately. Or a student wrestles down a teacher and takes their firearm. It would be horrible. The news stories would be off the hook and they'd be screaming everything.
Right.
But it's proven, again, statistically, this is a safer, smarter way. It's proven. We're going to reduce gun violence. We're going to train our kids. And again, not just gun safety, but survival and first aid. Those are very important.
And
real life
when
things
I was
that
in high
kids can
school, Kevin, we used to be able to, because a lot of kids went hunting before school. So those
Right.
kids were actually allowed to bring their guns to school so long as they were locked in a rack in their vehicle and they told the principal about it. Now, I assume these days that would never fly.
you
But
can't even
when
have
I
a
was in
shell.
high school, that was the situation.
Yeah. You can't even have a shell in school, even an empty casing. In fact, you can't even have a gun on your t-shirt. You're going to get a call from these indoctrination centers, right? We're going to get to school and
We're going to go
education
to
in a
education
minute.
right after this. So if you want to
All right.
transition, be my guest.
Well, again, this is part of it. The agenda that's being taught to our kids is absolutely insane. We used to have a rifle team here in Bennington. Vermont in general, we don't have any pro ball sport teams. We don't have anything really to brag about, but we do have marksmen all throughout history, our National Guard especially. A lot of trick shooters, a lot of famous Western guys. They're Vermonters, right? We're known for our marksmanship from the Green Mountain Boys all the way to present day. So that's kind of our thing. And again, right now, I think it's like 86% of Vermont homes have guns in them. So let's pretend tomorrow, Caleb, we're going to become criminals. We're going to go rob and pillage for a living. Do you want to go to Massachusetts, where some knucklehead has already passed a law they can't defend themselves? I picked the house that says this is a
Yeah, I'm
gun-free
not robbing
zone.
anyone in
Or do you
Vermont.
want to come to Vermont, right, where our men, women, and children all have guns and know how to use them? It's a no-brainer. Guns keep people safe, and God forbid you ever have to use one. I carry one. It's my worst fear. So my worst fear. I'm a pro hunter. I've shot a lot of animal harvested is a better word. A lot of animals. We eat it. I feed a lot of people. There's a lot to the sport of hunting and conservation, managing our wildlife and our critical habitat. But it's a lot of hooves. Even squirrels or alligators bother me because they have hands, and that's it's too close for me. So it's my worst nightmare. I hope nobody ever has to use a gun.
Have you ever had to pull a gun on anybody?
Yeah, no, I've never had to. No.
Good. I also, it seems like there's a lot of people out there that think gun owners are just waiting for the opportunity to pull out a gun. But as someone who owns guns myself, that's my worst nightmare.
Yeah, no, me too. And I think most people are like that. You see a surge right now, especially in firearm sales, and there's a lot of women. I mean, even it's fun. Shooting guns is fun. The idea you can go target shooting or do this, it's like a competition. You can get in all sorts of different levels, but it doesn't have to be feared. It should be respected. It's a tool that's designed to kill things, right? And it's very good at what it does. You just have to respect that fact. But again, statistically, historically, they're trying to take our guns. And I think I know why. I think everybody watching this probably knows why. It's a lot more. It's about that control factor. Anytime a country has removed guns, not only our personal security and safety on that level, because you are responsible for you, right? Until the cops get there, it's up to you, right? And I want especially women to have that
And
ability.
I'd like to echo a point that was made by John Rogers, who was a former senator and House rep, who said,
Democrat.
he said, yeah, but a different breed. I really,
right. That's a good thing, I'm saying. Yes, sir.
But John said, he said, what's Joe Biden protected by? What's Hillary Clinton protected by? He said, all these liberals are protected by the most sophisticated firearms that exist. And they're trying to tell you, you don't deserve the same protection. What are your thoughts on that statement?
Well, that's absolutely ridiculous, you know, and you see that over and over again, right? They want to have guns, they just don't want you to have guns. And this is a big deal for me. Right now, I'm a governor in exile. I'm in a friend's house right now because I can't stay in my home or in my community because of the harassment, intimidation, the death threats. They cut my brake lines, they slash tires. So I'm constantly moving. I mean, I've been naming judges and senators for 3 or 4 years. It's probably not the safest or smartest thing, but that's my plan. That's my play. And that's what I've been doing. So for me, personal security is really important, right? It's constant. And one of my issues here is I do a lot of speaking outside. I just came from Pennsylvania where we did a truth tour with Lewis Herms.
Yeah, I
I
saw
got
that.
another one coming up in Boston in a week or two. I'm not even sure. I got my schedule is so full, but I can't travel. I'm stuck in Vermont state. I can't go through New York or Massachusetts with a firearm, so I can no longer protect myself. And I don't like that. And I got some great news for not just Vermonters, but we're bringing in manufacturers. I want jobs and growth and development here. And we have air guns now that are going to be legal. It's all 50 states. I have a right now I'm hunting for the last 5 or 6 years with a 50 caliber 3000 psi pneumatic air gun. It'll shoot a 300 grain round ball through your pickup truck door. I can kill deer sized game out to 80 or 100 meters. Oh, and it shoots arrows. When I shoot your pickup truck with an arrow, I actually get a pass through. It's the fastest way to sling an arrow known to mankind. It's like a 430 grain
Well, it's
arrow,
like
just under
pneumatic.
600 feet. Pneumatic, right? Pneumatic air,
Hmm.
right? And we're gonna talk about some more things because we got some exciting things coming up with air power. But essentially, we now have a 50 caliber pistol that's going to be manufactured right here in Vermont state, and it's legal in all 50 states. You don't have to shoot a lead ball or a sabot. You can actually shoot a rubber ball
Hmm.
or a 50 caliber pepper ball, which I can't even imagine. But because it's air, and there's no explosive, there's no ignition system, it's legal in all 50. So we're going to be
So this
making
is
that.
a sort of a workaround to the federal firearm laws.
Again, it's air. It's not a firearm. Can't even call it
Oh,
a toy.
it's an air arm.
It's not your daddy's BB gun. We'll put it that way.
All right, Kevin, I want to get off this topic. I thought maybe education was a good
Sure,
place to go next. But
man.
and I'm just once again, I'm just going to let you go on these subjects, and I'll chime in with some follow-ups as needed.
Is that what you're calling it, Caleb? Is education? Between the critical race theory and Gary the transgender dinosaur, and you don't even have. We don't need parental consent when they come to school. They're just our kids. We're going to make them take part in experiments, medical experiments. We're going to force them to wear masks even when they're outside or playing gym. That's absolutely ridiculous. And I think education is another scam. They've taxed you to death on every other level. They don't dare ask for more. So now they bury it in education. The education price in Vermont state is absolutely ludicrous. It's like I think it's over $18,000, $20,000 per student to go through. We've got schools with less than 1,000 kids that got over $1 million budget. There's a problem here. So I think that system is actually collapsing. I think that's what we're watching. I believe the future of education is in charter schools and private schools and home schools. And it's as simple as the money follows the student. So if you're homeschooling, you get to keep that tax money, but we're going to keep it a lot lower than we got it right now. As far as public schools go, again, I think we need to get the state of Vermont right out of education. I don't like them in education anymore. That's where it got corrupted. That's something that should be left back, I think, to
Do
the
you have
individual
kids, Kevin?
communities. I do. I have 5 children. They've been through that system. And, again, I love my kids to death. I'm not real happy with the education system. I was that world travel that we talked about. I've been blessed with world travel as a kid. So the hands-on education for me came in a lot more, than what I received here in
What
Vermont
are
state.
the age ranges of your kids, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure, 18 to 27 right now.
Okay. And how have you talked to them about this, and how do they feel about the education system here in Vermont?
Right. Well, I think everybody can. Are you happy with the education system in Vermont? Because I don't know too many people who are.
I had
Uh,
some really good teachers in high school, although I thought particularly the version of history I was taught was complete bullshit.
yeah.
They said we won the war in Vietnam. I could have swore as soon as we left, they, took over the whole fucking city again. So you know, like learning math was obviously good, but like, you know, most of the important shit that I've learned, I feel like has been outside of that formal education environment.
It's been from experiences. And what happens, what you really learn at school is to sit down and shut up. Don't think outside the box or get out of line or we're going to punish you.
Oh, I
That's
got in
what you
trouble
learn
for
in your
that.
public education. Well, I think we all did, you know, in fact, right now, the people who are really, you know, awake, we're all rebels at heart, right? But I had a hard time in school from that perspective. I don't like rules. I never like rules, and I always questioned authority. My mom told me that, and I think it's great advice. Just because they're a teacher doesn't mean they know everything. And I think we've been lied to on an epic level, Caleb. I think my parents lied to me. Not that they would, they love me, but I think they were lied to, and that's been perpetuated and going on. You know, back to the basic structure of education, though, if we're going to keep the system we have, I think we need to get rid of the teachers union. You're going to get lots of fan mail for that one, along with Chinese core curriculum, right? And critical, that's part of critical race theory. And go back to the three R's, arithmetic. I always love that, right? Reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's what we need to be doing. There's so many things for our kids to learn today. Again, the teachers really are stressed for time to put all this curriculum in there to defend them. And likewise, when we stopped parenting, teachers kind of had to take over and they took over that role. You know, you talked to a lot of teachers, they got into that industry because they love kids and they want to help, they want to educate
Sure.
people, right? So again, as the parents got less and less, you know, the teachers took a greater role. So that's that separation of family nucleus. And that's something else that I want to get back to. I mean, I think with our tax structure, the way I'm going to set it up, you know, right now, both parents got to work, not just work, but each got three jobs because they're only giving you 14 hours and nobody's getting benefits. And you don't know where the next, you know, mortgage payment's going to come from. And that's scary. So you're paying someone else to raise your kids as you know, are trapped in this slave lifestyle. It's ridiculous. So my plan is to change all that. It's, you know, it's horrible. And education is a big piece of that. I think we're going to see a whole new shift. Right now we're watching homeschool, you know, just grow by leaps and bounds. I know a lot of teachers didn't want to take part in the medical experiment, so they left the school. They get together with 6 or 8 parents, and now those parents pay that teacher. They're actually making more than they made from the school. And the kids are getting, you know, much more of a one-on-one. If you got 8 students compared to 35, that's a lot better. Or likewise, we get 6 or 8 parents together, and I got Monday, do a little bit of coordination and you know, disperse that workload. And we're teaching our kids real things. Again, real things on how to survive this crazy life we've all been thrown into.
So like this is something I've always said is like things maybe we should add to the public school curriculum, like how to do your taxes, how to
They can't.
grow how to grow your own food, how to cook food. I don't know,
Yes,
you
sir.
know, how to you know, forage for wild edibles or things like that. Is that something you'd like to see included in public school curriculum?
Absolutely. In fact, a lot of that's right in that conservation class I was talking about, right? Hunter education. They talk about outdoor edibles and how to survive in garden and horticulture and agriculture. And the same thing for cannabis. We should have a cannabis college, whether you're talking about the horticulture,
Well,
you know,
I see
the
Castleton is
marketing,
offering a major now in cannabis.
yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think that's a big future. We're going to get to that subject too. In fact, we can lead right into that.
No,
You know, I
I'd
think,
like to
oh, go
actually,
ahead.
I'd like to challenge you on a couple things you said. I'm
Sure.
really curious about your thoughts on the critical race theory, because you mentioned that. And also you mentioned something about sort of the transgender stuff. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on both of those issues, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Well, again, you know, you live your life and I don't have a problem with that. I think Vermonters very open, tolerant, accepting people. But when you're talking about, you know, these subjects, sexuality specifically, to kindergartners, to third graders, to fourth graders, I think that's pushing it. I think that's pushing the boundary. And the way that I feel is, again, it's not even equality. They want superiority. These, you know, this group of people, these liberal minds, and you can be whatever you want to be. I don't care who your God is or your lover, whatever you want. But when it's to the point where you're literally pushing this on our children, you know, I have a problem with that then, right?
Hmm.
So on that, and what was the other thing we were talking about? There's not
Critical
any
race
actual
theory, maybe.
oh,
It was, yeah.
critical race theory. Again, I'm offended, just at the idea that we're teaching this. Governor Phil Scott came out and he called Vermonters irredeemably racist. All Vermonters. Your
Really?
governor called you a racist. And again, this world travel, I met two men in Indonesia with no noses. Their noses were cut off because they were Christian. So I've seen real racism. I've seen real oppression. And Vermont is not, I'll go on the record as saying Vermont is the least racist state in the nation. Does racism exist? Absolutely. To the point where we're making laws and changing policies is ludicrous. Ludicrous. Again, it's more race bait. In fact, I think Vermonters are, I said the least racist. We're so racist that we fall for this stuff because it's not something we want in Vermont. And, it doesn't matter what color your skin is. You can walk down any street in Vermont state and hold your chin high. And I think Vermonters give you the same respect as anybody else. Again, is there, oppression and racism? Absolutely. And we got to watch that. And we police it ourselves. I know I see Vermont's the only state where we never had slavery. If you want to talk about reparations, how about the couple 100,000 white guys that died abolishing slavery, right? It's an amazing story. If you go back in history and you look at the very first ever case involving slaves in Vermont, our country was like 2 months old. I'm not even kidding. And the judge's decision was the slave owner could keep his slaves as long as he could provide a bill of sale from God. And I think that's a very Vermonty judge decision, and I love it. That's what we need back in Vermont office, like I said. A few Vermont butts in those Vermont seats.
Kevin, and I might lose a couple of people on this one too, but I'm one of those other guys who also thinks you should live your life, and as long as you're not fucking with me, I'm happy. Like, do your thing. However, like, it does seem like in juxtaposition to the cannabis, the smoking age is 21, right? But if you wanted to have a gender reassignment surgery, it seems like they're doing that very young. And like, I really don't know the finer points of that, but it seems like either the smoking age should be lower, or maybe, we should come to some kind of consensus on what constitutes an adult, or at what age you are supposedly capable of making those kind of decisions, because that's a big decision. You're
Right.
going to change your gender. That's a huge decision, and
You
I
put that
respect
on
that
your
decision.
6-year-old. No,
Yeah,
I
and I
agree with
respect
you.
that decision, but it does seem like, like, we don't let kids vote, but somehow these kind of decisions are allowed to be made by kids. And look, I'm not one to interfere with anyone's decisions, and I'd like to live and let live, but that does seem like an odd sort of juxtaposition.
No, absolutely. And it's common sense. Okay, this is common sense. Kids don't know. You're exploring all sorts of things, and you really, you know, in kindergarten, you shouldn't even be thinking about any of these things, and most kids aren't until you inject it into their little brains. And I think that's wrong, right? So again, I think there is age limits, but yeah, I don't think we should mutilate our children or abuse our children, right? And have, sexual reproductive changes done to them. I
What
mean,
about
that kid,
circumcision? How do you feel about circumcision?
yeah. Again, it's the same thing, I don't know how we're getting this personal, but
No,
again,
sorry.
I'm an American, so I am, and all my kids were, but I think that's a personal decision. And I remember going through the birth of my children, one child and during one son, they're arguing to absolutely get that done. And I mean, my common thought was, it's hard enough to keep a 4-year-old, get him to wash his hands. So it's going to be a lot easier that way. Right. But the next kid, they're saying don't do it. It's bad. You know what I mean? I mean, I think I'd have to look more into it, but I think that's again not a decision I want the government to make. I
Hmm.
think that should be mom and dad's decision, and I guess we'll leave it at that. When it comes to the gender stuff, though, Caleb, you caught me because that's a great comparison. That's a great comparison, but there's a big difference between a circumcision and a removal, or I don't even know what they would call that, the post-op, right, of a
I
transgender,
believe
either
that. Yeah,
direction.
yeah. or a gender reassignment surgery. I'm not sure the exact wording either.
I think when kids are, again, I like 18, and even 18's pushing it now that I'm an adult. When I was 18, I would argue that, right?
I was
But
an idiot when I was 18.
hire a teenager where they still know everything. I was one of those kids too. I think we all were, right? And as we get older, our parents get wiser. Like, man, my parents did know what they were talking about after all. So yeah, I think 18 is a good age, and it should be for everything. I agree with that too. You know, it's funny firearms are even in that discussion because they never were. You know, hunter education, we were just talking about it. When I first started my conservation program, I gave away between 60 40 and 60 dream hunts all over the country every year, just randomly picked kids and whatever. So I wanted Fish and Game to be involved, and I'd ask them to give free licenses. And down in the state of Alabama, you don't even need a license under 16 years old to go deer hunting. And I'm like, well, what about hunter education? And they said no. And that blew my mind because I'm a hunter education instructor and I know it works statistically and it's great. But the commissioner in Alabama explained it to me that they trust the people of Alabama. So if I've got a 6-year-old kid, an 8-year-old kid, I'm not going to leave them on a tree stump. I'm not going to send them into the woods. The amount of supervision, in fact, it's extra. If you look at the statistics again, we're extra safe. It's super, super rare for anything to happen because of that parental supervision and restraint, right? So I think that's again the key to this is you got to have supervision and people looking over you whenever you do anything like that, guns or any of it. So.
All right. Well, we're going to transition off of this. And I was hoping we got cannabis, we got opioids.
Cannabis.
Yeah, let's do that next because
we'll
this is
cannabis
obviously
next. Opioids is my best. I think the opioids is the number one thing facing not just Vermont.
Well, let's do that first then.
That one. Well, you want to do that? All right,
let's do that first. Yeah.
All right. Well, again, it's how many people need to die before we get off our butt and do something. I'm sick of politicians collecting money and talking about it and doing nothing. The world precedent has been set, and I'd like to follow. It started in Holland and then Portugal. And my plan for opioids is to decriminalize them. In Portugal, they actually legalized them. I wouldn't go that far. If I catch you dealing or trafficking, then we're going to put you in jail for a long, long time. But I'd like to treat this part of our society as a sick part of society instead of a criminal part of society, so we can alleviate some of the stress on our overstressed hospitals and not just medical, EMS, law enforcement. You go through a lot of people. You can be a recluse living on top of a mountain. Your taxes are still affected by opioids. Again, the time, money, effort, and energy, the crime, everything that comes with them is absolutely horrible. So what I'd like to do is offer real rehabilitation, and we've never seen anything like this.
Vermont definitely has a lack of it seems like bed space for people who are trying to get clean.
Right now, you say every person that I know that's been addicted to heroin specifically, right, opioids, they hate it as much as they love it. And you get about a 3-day window and they're out of time and money and they say, Mom, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And we say, okay, well, for $800 and in 10 days, if we get it bad, and the same thing when they get that help, it's a 28-day detox, if that, and we throw
which
them
is
right
not
back
enough.
into the same circumstances.
That's not enough from my experience. Most people that have a heavy heroin addiction, I'd say probably 6 to 12 months is a more realistic timeline.
Prohibition doesn't work. The war on crimes didn't work. It failed miserably, right? Our overdose rate grows by 300 to 500% a year, right?
Yeah, and it seemed like during COVID that it was definitely a spike in the fentanyl overdose deaths.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And again, what I'm looking to do is give those guys real help. So we're talking 3 months to 18 months, a year and a half of your life. And if you do that, it's going to come with mental health therapy. It's going to come with jobs training. It's going to come with sober living aftercare, right? And people say, Kevin, who's going to pay for all that, right? Well, we are. And it's actually cheaper. It's actually cheaper because what we're doing right now is, on top of the crime and the lives that we're losing, we Narcan them 10 times and we send them to rehab 45 times, and then we're paying to put them in jail. Incarceration costs is outrageous. And the really scary part, guys, is we're paying to put them in coffins. These are Vermonters. I have sympathy and empathy. We're all addicted to something, right? Sex, food, drugs, alcohol, work, whatever it is, right? So I know a lot of people, great people doing horrible things because it's a mental illness, right? That's why they call it a disease. I had a nephew that died of leukemia, so when I first heard that, that made me mad. But what happens is that rewires your mind. It's a mental health disease where the drug comes first, and it's a hell of an, to get off of this stuff, and even worse, to get off heroin is to get off Suboxone, right? We're not using it the correct way,
Yeah, I've
guys.
seen some of
It's a
my
controlled
and
substance.
look, as someone who grew up in the Northeast Kingdom, when I went through the DARE program in 5th grade when I was 10, they said St. Johnsbury is the heroin capital of Vermont. And that didn't mean anything to us at the time. But
Right.
25 years later, it's like, holy shit, like that's really true. So I've watched and I've been to a number of funerals, and I fucking hate every one of them, man. It's brutal to watch. And,
It
and some
is.
of these people have loving families, and it's just
They
you
all
you
do.
wonder
It,
where they went
it,
wrong, man.
it's always somebody's son or daughter or, loved one for sure. Brother, sister, friend, whatever it is. And it's like cancer now. It's affected every one of us. Every one of us have felt this, whether it's been you've been robbed by somebody, you're paying hack taxes because of it. The big thing for me, again, they've done it in Portugal, and it not only saves money, but they're saving lives.
A
They've
lot of lives.
reduced they've reduced heroin usage by
The
75%,
overdose
opioid
deaths have gone to
overdose by
almost fucking zero.
85, drug use by 56%, crime, I think 412%. It took 19 years. I mean, this doesn't happen overnight, guys. This is a real thing. Right
I
now,
was
one of the
just
hot topics is
I was
the
just looking
safe
at the numbers the other day,
injection.
actually.
Yeah. And that's what did it for me. When I first heard this too, we're going to decriminalize heroin. Like, these guys are insane, right? But if you look into it, the numbers alone speak for themselves. And, again, I just talked about Indonesia. I was over there a couple of years ago. In the Philippines, it's the opposite. It's, God sorting out the riffraff, right? They don't treat human life quite the same. So the Philippine president gave their police, judge, jury, and executioner, they could shoot on site any suspected drug dealers. So
Wow.
if I'm on the street giving you $20, I owed you from the football game, and it looks wrong, right? They can take us both out. They killed, I don't know, this was a year ago when I was there, or 2 years ago. And in the first 6 months, I think they killed 350,000 people. And
Wow.
it worked. Like, heroin use, drug use is way down in the Philippines, but I can't imagine doing that in the United States. That's a ridiculous thing, in my opinion, also.
Right.
So I'd like to follow the Portugal lead because it's working, saving money and saving lives. And it's just, why aren't we doing this? It's the same
And
thing
another thing,
because the government's making money.
I really like, first of all, that harm reduction model, where instead of doing this fear-based model of saying, hey, drugs are bad, and if you get arrested, you're going to go to jail and all this shit. I like the model of saying, okay, some of you guys are going to do drugs. That's just an inevitability. Here's how you do them safely. Here's how we keep you safe. Here's how you
Right.
consume in a safe manner so that we don't have to deal with as many overdose deaths. And I feel like a shift away from the fear-based propaganda towards a harm reduction model, I feel personally like that could be incredibly beneficial.
Education is key, even early education when it comes to this. And that's what they do. That's part of the program again in Portugal. We talk about safe injection sites here, right? Safe houses. Now, Peter Duvall, we were talking about, they want portable safe houses. That's a horrible idea if it's just that. A needle exchange program, horrible if it's just that. But if you do this all together, it's proven to work. So it's ridiculous, and all these people sorting out the riffraff that we talk about. There's two types of addicts in the world. There's the guy that fell off the ladder at work, and the doctor said, here, take some of these, and then the pill stopped and the pain didn't. So he's set up now. Thanks, doc. Right? We got prisoners now. If you go to jail, they ask you if you want to be on the Butte program. So you ain't done nothing. You're not even, maybe you're a drinker. Maybe you just, beat somebody up. You wrestled in the front lawn with your neighbor. Now you're doing a 2-year bid. They ask you if you want to be on Butte. You say, obviously, you say yes. Anything to make this next 2 years go better. You get out of jail a full-blown addict. And that's something else we have to look at, the stressors in life that put people here where
I
they
was
believe
gonna
they have to
say,
need a crutch.
is that something we
Government.
need to look at? Like, is our
mental
society
health in
sort of
general.
driving people to
Yeah,
this place where they feel like heroin is the only escape?
well, and again, heroin's not the only thing we can get addicted to,
Right, but
right?
like you know, that
That's
seems
the
like
big
a
one.
big one for a lot of people who are just like have no family maybe, or no connections, or no prospects for a better future.
Yeah, I mean, it's a horrible, sad situation, and it's hardest for the family, to be honest. The closer you are to the addict, the more you feel. This is a loved one that's going in your purse and stealing money, or they take your car, or they do things again that a normal person. These are good people that are doing things that they normally wouldn't do, and it's because of the drug, right? It's not even that person anymore. That's addict Kevin. Or there's a difference between addict Kevin and user Kevin, right? Someone who is an addict, they're going to be an addict for the rest of their lives. And I can forgive them for that, and I can help them through that. And even relapse. I think relapse is part of recovery. These people need a lot of help. And again, right now, we're not getting any from the government. In fact, it's the opposite. When you guys figure out where the drugs are really coming in, that's the CIA. They bring them in, and from my experience, I back the blue, but I think they're being distributed by our law enforcement on a great, great deal here, Vermont State and other places too.
Now, let me ask you this, Kevin. Have you talked to your kids about drugs, and how do you go about that conversation?
Yeah, I think you'd be open and honest. It's the same with guns, right? When I'm passing my gun cabinet, kids are 4, 5, 6 years old, and they look over and they say, "Ooh, what's that, Dad?" And I say, "That's a firearm." And we open the cabinet and we take it out, we rub it and we play with it, and I explain it to them. It's the kid in the cookie jar thing, right? I'm not going to talk to my kids about drugs. That way they'll never do drugs. That's insane. And the same thing for guns. You don't talk to your kids about guns. At some point in their life, they're going to have contact. They're going to come in contact with a firearm. Hopefully it's in a positive manner, but maybe it won't be. I want them trained, and the same with drugs. So I've always found the best way, especially with kids, is to be honest. Kids are a lot smarter than we give them credit
Imagine
for.
that, being honest with your
Yeah,
kids.
I talk to them, open and honest with my kids, and I always have. I'm not going to lie to my children, right? I'm not going to say don't do this while I do it, right? Anything like that. I'm gonna just tell them
Give
the
me the
way it
vape.
is. So,
Sorry, I'm trying to get the vape from my girlfriend.
all right.
So
Yeah.
let's go on to the cannabis. I didn't mean to get all depressing there with the
Well, that's
opioids.
okay. No, that's okay, because again, I want you to follow this through with me, because an 18-month thing, right? This is a big deal. We didn't get that far, but I'm talking about real rehab centers all over Vermont State, facilities, hundreds of facilities. So now I'm going to need architects and engineers and landscapers and plumbers and electricians and doctors and nurses and therapists and jobs, economic growth and development instantly, as we're saving lives and saving money. And then here's another word you don't hear out of any other politicians: ROI. That's a return on investment, guys, because no other place has this. And I'd love to have Vermont lead the nation out of the opioid crisis, because I love and care about my brothers and sisters in New Hampshire and in Massachusetts and in New York State, and no one has anything like this. So I think these facilities could be utilized again, not just for Vermonters. There's a lot of us that need help, but for the region, and I'd like to see it sweep right across the nation. Cannabis, right? Cannabis. We're going to go on to next.
Well, and I just want to say one more thing before we get on
Sure.
that, is that the state has control of a number of properties that they pay no taxes on that perhaps could be used to set up rehab facilities.
Absolutely. There's a lot of facilities and buildings. Absolutely. And our government buildings in general, right? COVID taught us that. The lights are on, but there's nobody home, man. All these great big granite buildings with gargoyles and stuff. Why do they need them? Why do they need them anymore? Why are we paying for those elaborate things when they don't have to be used, especially when we find out what the people in them have been doing, right?
Right, especially
So,
with the property taxes people are paying here in Vermont. Well, they have all of these properties they pay no taxes on.
right, that's a big part of that RICO investigation. I should have put that in my background. That's another thing.
We're going to do that
Um,
next time, Kevin.
I'm I'm a reporting party, right, for Chad Schmidt, the Bennington County Sheriff, and the FBI. We've got some interesting things going on behind the scenes in terms of
We're going to skip. I'm
corruption.
telling you, we're going to get that next time. But
That's okay.
yeah,
Just like we talked about firearm safety in the schools, the money for that is already existing through Vermont Fish and Wildlife, right? Through the hunter education program, right? The curriculum's already established. All the instructors have already come with background checks, right? So they can teach in our schools. Everything is all lined up. We just got to do it. And that's kind of the same thing, when it comes to a lot of these cannabis things, the cannabis issues that we're talking about. The problem here in Vermont state, when we're talking medical and recreational, is the Vermont doesn't know how to define legal. A tomato is legal. I can have a tomato, you can have a tomato, we can grow tomatoes, we can have one for dinner, I can share. I can have a little stand out on the corner and sell tomatoes if I got good tomatoes, right? If I want to sell a lot of tomatoes, then I need a license from the Department of Agriculture. And I think cannabis should be the same way. We need to get a grip on bankers. Right now, again, they're making it a rich man sport. If you have anything to do with cannabis or CBD or any of that, you need $4,000 just to open the bank account. So I think what we need to do with cannabis is keep it out of the hands of big pharma. We're already seeing GMO come into it.
Well, I've already seen Pfizer come in with a big $7 billion investment, and I'm still not quite sure what the fuck they're doing, but certainly
varies, right? Same
this was
thing.
always my concern, Kevin, was that when we saw legalization, we were going to see companies like Philip Morris and RJ Reynolds, the big tobacco companies, come in and package up a 20-pack of Marlboro joints, or these pharmaceutical companies that seem to want to just control everything, enter the game, as opposed to just small craft cultivators, which we have a ton of around Vermont, who grow some really phenomenal product.
That's absolutely the problem, and you're seeing it everywhere. It happened out west. Right now, I just watched in New York State, I think they were opening up 5 dispensaries, so they're taking bids, right? And low bid was like 120 million. So you're out. Whoever's watching this right now in Vermont state, you're gone. And that's it. You got to understand that, big corporation, big pharma, big politics, big tech, it's all the same. It's the same entity. It's us against them. They're the bad guys, right? So I want to leave cannabis with the people, right? And let you guys do it. Again, I think we should collect taxes, but we can't overtax it. We got to keep it out of the hands of the politicians.
Right, and the taxes
tax
as they
the hell out of
stand.
it.
Sorry to interrupt you, but the taxes as they stand right now, we're looking at a 14% excise tax and a 6% sales, so effectively 20% tax, which is double the tax on alcohol. Do you think cannabis should be taxed twice as high as alcohol?
No, I do not. In fact, I think it's going to go up a lot more than that, and that's a problem. That just feeds the black market. These guys can't help it. They're just so greedy. The revenue, marijuana was our #1 cash cow, our #1 export in Vermont state when it was an illegal substance. Okay. So this is, they don't call it the Green Mountain State for nothing.
We're supposed to call it cannabis now because marijuana is racist.
Well, and again, I'm going to call it that because I think when you're talking about recreational, I like to separate it like that. When it comes to, I think that's, you guys got my opinion on recreational, right? I approve, and I don't want the government really involved. We just got to keep it out of big pharma, keep it with the people. As far as medical goes, it's a no-brainer. They can give you steroids or opioids or all these other things, but your doctor can't prescribe marijuana.
Right. So we have kids.
Right,
so this is one point that I've made a bunch of times, is that we have 8-year-old children who take Adderall. That's amphetamines, and the state always says, when it comes to cannabis, they say, oh, we need more. They say, oh, we need more science. But when it comes to Adderall, we have all the science. We know what amphetamines do. It causes weight loss, eating disorders, skin problems, psychosis, all kinds of sleep disorder, whatever. We know what that does, and yet they still give it to little kids. And now we've had to argue about, what's the safe age for cannabis? Like, it's 21, but you'll give Adderall to an 8-year-old. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's the start of it. Not just Adderall, benzos is another one. They take these young kids and they get them addicted when you are as a parent. And again, as a parent, I don't want to put all the blame on you guys because you're listening to your doctor. That's the medical community. And again, right back to big pharma, right back to big politics. So I think that's the the trap we've been caught in for a long time. And I think that's going away too. You're seeing everybody switch over to holistic, right? There's a lot of people that are afraid to go to the doctor. I can't go to my doctor right now. I've got a no trespass order from my hospital emergency room. Tell me that's legal, right? Because I didn't want to wear a mask, right? It's incredible stuff. And the longer that we allow these guys to get away with it, the longer it's going to continue. So that's back to the why I'm running for office. I'm not going to allow it anymore.
And it just seems, wow, this comes back to the point about going to, people signing up for the military. Like, you can go die in a war when you're 18, but you can't get some weed at a dispensary. You can't buy alcohol. You can't buy cigarettes. But, if you got an 8-year-old kid, they'll feed him Adderall to help him get through fucking math class in 4th grade.
Yeah, most of these problems you can trace back to your own government.
Yeah,
And I used to almost feel
are we
treasonous for saying that, but they're the problem. It's not you. It's not the vehicle you drive or what political party you belong to or who you vote for or what color your skin or, your religion, your language. All those are boxes. We've been put in these boxes: religious box, political box, educational box, medical box. We got to start getting outside the box. You are not the problem. They are. We can't afford our government anymore, guys. That's the problem. Not only the tyrannical overrule. These guys are ultimate controllers. They believe their only job is to write laws. So they're up there in my appeal. You're just making more restrictions and laws constantly. That's not their only job, is to protect the people. And they failed miserably. Do you feel protected? Can't even live in your home, right? You're worried about your next job or where your meals
in the last 6 years or 7 years, I've watched a $400 million Ponzi scheme unfold at Jay Peak and Burke Mountain, for which the 3 people responsible got a total of 8 years in jail between them for the biggest fraud in Vermont history. 8 years. Like, I know drug dealers who have done more time than that combined. Like, and then we've also seen over the last decade, $3 billion shortfall in the teachers and state employees pension fund. And I'd like to know, where the fuck did all that money go?
Yeah, well, you know where it went. Okay, well,
I have
we all
some
know
guesses.
where it went. These guys are all millionaires, right? And they got there off of our back. And that's, I don't even know why we're denying or wondering anymore. This is your government. We talked about environmental issues. I brought it up the other day. Lake Champlain, right? It's our biggest fishery in Vermont state. The city of Burlington, just Burlington, dumps between 3 and 5 million gallons of septic into that fishery every single year.
I read that story every year. Winooski accidentally unloads 1 million gallons of partially treated wastewater into the lake.
Yeah, well, it's not just accident. They admit it. They release it. What happens is our infrastructure is so weak up there. St. Albans was the same way. They didn't want it backing up into people's houses in the streets, so they put it in your lake, right? Where we get our drinking water, most of our drinking water for Lake Champlain Valley, same lake. That is disgusting, right? And you don't have to be a Republican or a Democrat or
on top of all of the cow shit that's already flowing into the lake.
Well, and I think, again, that was a scam. That's part of what killed our farmers. You can't even walk your herd of cattle across the river anymore, right? Meanwhile, the city of Burlington's dumping 5 million gallons a year into there. There's no such thing as blue-green algae. We hear that all the time. Blue-green algae, our beaches are closed. It's not algae. They call it blue-green algae, but it's actual fecal coliform caused from human feces. So this year, the city of Burlington just released 500,000 gallons into our lake in June, and in July, your beaches were closed. Wonder what happened. I wonder where that came from. I wonder if Vermont Travel and Tourism is using that. Come to Vermont, come enjoy the water. Just don't let it touch your body. You going home.
I wouldn't go swimming in Lake Champlain.
No, nobody would. So we put about $56 million a year into that lake. That's just through your taxes and Fish and Wildlife, because again, it's our biggest fishery, something that I love.
And let me ask you,
it's my lake too, right?
Let me interrupt you, because this is something I asked John Rogers, and he talked a lot about the money that's been spent to clean up the lake. But unless you stop the shit that's going into the lake, isn't all that money just kind of pissing into the wind?
That's where I was going. This is a government created problem. Their solution is to tax you, control you, and restrict you more. And guess what, guys? They need more money because there's more shit in your lake. Do you see the pattern here, right? And again, back to RICO, we're talking about the largest Ponzi scheme in history. That's because you don't know about them yet. You don't know about them all, Caleb. Wait do you see what's coming? RICO stands for racketeering. That's a federal, multi-state investigation, but it's done on a local level, so nobody gets away this time. And I think Vermonters are going to be astonished when we start breaking the RICO cases. You know, there's on an average, there's between 1,000 and 1,200 sealed federal indictments nationwide every year, right? Nationwide, about 1,000, 1,200. In 2020, there was 260,000. Here in Vermont State, we had 216, the last that I counted, 53 of them for Bennington County. But even those are deceiving because each RICO indictment can have up to 99 names on it. You can go to pacer.gov. That is the FBI website where you can get that information. You can't tell what the charges are. You can't tell who they're going to. They're still sealed indictments. But again, we're starting to see some of them get unsealed, like with Chad Schmidt, the Bennington County Sheriff, and I think Judge Colvin down here is going to be a follow-up along with
Or
TJ Donovan.
the EB5 Ponzi scheme case. They unsealed about 700,000 pages of documents, some of which are still redacted, which I don't know what the point is of unsealing a redacted document, but I've read about 5,000 of those 700,000 pages, and boy, what a fucking mess.
It is a mess. It's all a mess. And again, it's your government. So, you know, it's not our.
Yeah, it's not my government. I didn't vote for any of those pricks.
Well, I got to tell you, you know, and people got to understand when I say this, because I don't want this job. I've never wanted this job. I can't imagine anybody wanting this job, right? It's not, unless it's a get rich career path like Bernie Sanders. This is no fun, Caleb. You know, people are slashing my tires and brake lines, right? They ridicule me. They laugh at me.
Really? You had your brake lines slashed? People are fucking with your car?
Oh yeah, they started with 5 slashed tires and they broke my hood latch when they disabled my power steering, ended up cutting my brake lines and eventually pried open the gas station tank and put something in my engine to seize it. My second vehicle, they got in and they cut all the, you know, the lines up front. So my battery, my horn, my lights, they just took out everything they could get within clipping distance. So yeah, this is very serious for me. And when I say they, I actually think that was my sheriff. You know, but who am I going to, who do you want me to tell? Should I go to my sheriff, Chad Schmidt, or should I go to, you know, my police chief in Bennington? He's not even, he doesn't
go
even
to
have
the
a
attorney
badge.
general.
The attorney general has been removed, right? TJ Donovan, when
Well, he removed
Trudeau,
himself. I believe he retired about 6 months before the end of his term here, which I thought was very strange. You know, he's been there for 16 years, and then 6 months before the end of his term, he decided to go join an online gaming company.
right, the top lawyer in Vermont State, right? He's going to go be a video game.
Seemed
attorney,
like a
the
weird
attorney
move.
general. This guy could taste the governorship for the last decade. Anybody who's been in Vermont has seen TJ try for that. Okay. When the lead detective for the Vermont State Police, his name was Trudeau, when he leaked to TJ Donovan that he was under federal investigation, TJ made, you can't do that, by the way. Lead investigator tells the guy you're investigating, he's under investigation. That was bad. That's why Trudeau's not there anymore. So TJ made 3 phone calls. The first one was to Chief Justice Cohen. Now we're talking about the Vermont Supreme Court. The second phone call was to Judge Carzones in Rutland. His wife just happens to run the Vermont Bar Association. And then he called Judge Colvin down here in Bennington, which is where we get into the matching EIN numbers. We have a lot of shell companies here in Vermont State.
Yeah, we're going to do that another time.
Right.
That's going to be the next one.
Okay. Let's stay right on policy then. Did you want to keep on talking about hemp? Because I do.
You know, I thought I wanted to touch a little bit more on the cannabis because this is the big story that I've been covering.
Sure.
And it's something that I've read the legislation intimately, and I've come to know this. And my father, when I was 7 years old, was arrested in the biggest drug seizure in Vermont history. It was like 50 tons of hash they were smuggling back from Canada. And he did 3.5 years of federal time. It was all over the news. I got to watch him get dragged away by the feds when I was, you know, on the Channel 3 news when I was 7. And, you know, my mom was like, we're going to put the news on now and you're going to see your dad. And there he was getting the perp walk. Yeah, we had to go visit him in
I'm sorry for
prisons.
that.
Yeah, me too. And there's been a lot of talk about this social equity piece of this bill where we're going to help people who have been negatively impacted by the war on drugs. But what they've offered those social equity applicants is we're going to waive the application fee and the license fee, which is really the smallest cost. Like if I wanted to set up a tier 1 indoor grow, from what I've seen from my friends, that's going to be about $50,000 or $60,000 worth of just lights and gear to get that going. I don't have that kind of money, and not to say like if my dad had not been arrested, we would have that kind of money, but it sure would have been interesting to see, and from my point of view, this bill really does nothing to help people that have been negatively impacted by the war on drugs.
No, what you need to do is the problem with the SBA, Small Business Administration, is it's federal, but you need to do the same thing on a Vermont level, on a state level. Because these you look at the CBD industry and what it's done and how it's grown in Vermont state, right? So again, the medical, again, no brainer. And as far as recreational goes, whether you're for it or against it, it's here. And I don't ever see it going away now that it's here, right? So I do think we need a little bit of regulation. I do think the state deserves to make a little money off of it, just like the people do. But that banking piece that I was talking about is a giant part of this. We need to get small business loans for those type businesses. And all of this, we're talking about economic growth and development and all these jobs that I had coming from my state. We're going to need housing to go with that. Housing, our homeless population is at an all-time high. Housing, it's hard to find housing and possible to find affordable housing here in Vermont state. So these are issues that we're going to have to take care of, again, all at one time. You look at my opioid policies again and that sober living aftercare. Right now, all of our motels in Vermont state are packed full of homeless addicts. A lot of them are addicts.
I saw they were doing that during COVID, was letting people stay in hotels.
Right. And again, they've, I don't want to downplay anybody here, criticize anybody, but they've destroyed our hotels. Right. You've got they're dealing out of every other room in most of the hotels here in Bennington. We have deaths, we have, regular police and ambulance visits in any of them. So here I am, a guy, businessman trying to bring people into Bennington. I'm not even sure what motel to send them at. It's scary. So yeah, we got to look at all that. And I think that's coming. My biggest, here's my pitch. I'm Kevin and I don't want to be your governor, right? I don't want to govern anybody, Caleb. I know you a little bit, but most people, I don't even have to meet them. They're Vermonters. They don't need me or Phil Scott or anybody to tell them what to do. What we need is someone to govern an out of control system. We need to make that system smaller and affordable and manageable. We need to imply, outside internal investigations, a whole bunch more public oversight. And small.
Well,
I think I can trill $1 billion off our budget right off the top just by trimming the fat.
And let me say this, because Phil Scott is always talking about this point. We need to get more people to move here so that we can make it more affordable. We need to increase our tax base. Do you think maybe if we just stopped blowing hundreds of millions of dollars in Ponzi schemes, that maybe it would be more affordable? Like I personally, I don't think we need more people to move here. I think what we need is people that are more responsible with handling our money.
Oh, 100%. 100%. We've had 45,000 Vermonters move in the last 3 years because they can't afford it anymore. That's why people are coming to Vermont. And thanks to Phil Scott and the COVID and the lockdowns, he's killed any other business that wants to come here. Taxes on top of that. They're not going to, every other candidate out there is tax. They want more taxes for you guys. I know you can't afford it. So I'm actually, I'm talking tax cuts and tax breaks. We don't need to raise minimum wage. What we need to do is drop the cost of living, i.e. taxes, i.e. them, the government. We cannot afford them anymore. That's a typical politician. As soon as I get elected, Caleb, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to double my pay. And if you don't think it's good, don't worry, because I can hire 5 of my friends and I'll pay them each $100,000 and they'll find committee and they're going to make sure that nothing, happened wrong. And that's the typical process. And if you don't like that, we'll hire another 10 of my friends and we'll get a subcommittee to look at the committee who can look at Kevin. But it's all my buddies. right? Right now, I'm watching the news media actually have direct reaction to my news. I tell people, hey, Matt Harrington, right, president of the Bennington Chamber of Commerce, is
Isn't he
embezzling.
the commissioner? Oh no, wait, that's Mike Harrington,
That's his
commissioner of the
brother,
DOL. Okay.
right? He stole hundreds of millions from the Department of Labor when they had that data breach. That'll come out too. But his brother, Mike or Matt, works at the Bennington Chamber of Commerce, and he's been embezzling $18,000 a month from the Bennington Welcome Center, the good people and businesses of Bennington for since COVID started. Not to mention the PPP loans and all that scandal when we get there.
Yeah, and
But
I
as soon as I
saw.
announce that, you're going to see, an article in the Bennington Banner. What a great job Matt's doing. Hey, my police chief doesn't have a badge because I think he's on restricted duty. We've got all new police officers. Boom, the Bennington Banner will have an article. What a great job Chief Doucette's doing as the safety officer. Christina Nolan, the top Fed in Vermont State, when we took her out, it was all quiet. As soon as I disclosed that, Christina Nolan for Senate. So this is direct damage control. That's what you're seeing. They have to relay and respond and cover up, these truths as they come out, but they
And
can't stop it now.
I definitely saw a lot of those PPP loans going out, and we saw this on a national level as well, where a bunch of members
Huge.
of Congress got these PPP loans and then had to return them because it came out in the news that they had gotten them, and those loans were supposed to be for businesses to stay open. I didn't think they were supposed to be for people in Congress to fucking have a
here in
nice
Vermont.
dinner.
You can go to pppdetective.com and punch in any business or name that you want in any state, and they're going to tell you exactly. You'll see some Vermont representatives.
That is a public record, those PPP
Matt
loans.
Harrington, well, they didn't think it was going to be public record, and they didn't think it was going to be traceable, but it is. Hence, another great big sting operation, and we got them. So Matt Harrington and the Bennington Chamber of Commerce, they got a PPP loan. Erica Martha.
The Bennington Chamber of Commerce got a PPP loan.
That's correct. $53,000, right? On top of the 18 grand he's embezzling. Erica Marthridge, the Bennington County State's attorney, our prosecutor, got a PPP loan. And the idea there is no matter what happens to Erica, she's still going to get her state check. Those loans were for small businesses so that you guys could keep on going. And what happened is
like the state employees didn't lose their jobs during this pandemic. In fact, they got to work from home.
That's right. They got a paycheck anyway. In fact, Matt Harrington, I think it was a total of 53,000 that Matt got on top of all the other regular pay and everything that they come in. So you can find that stuff. That's again, it's obvious. It's open public record.
Right, and that was supposed to be to keep your staff on payroll. But if you're working for a state agency, shouldn't your staff already be kept on payroll because they're state agents?
Well, and you'll see even beyond that, Patrick Winburn, right, Democrat, I ran against him in 2020, okay? Patrick Winburn got a PPP loan. These are federal loans. So let me just say, when you put down you have 4 employees, you better have 4 employees or it's federal fraud. It's felony, right? So you can look at Mr. Winburn's PPP loan, it's record, right? Go see how many employees he got.
Did you get a PPP loan, Kevin?
I did not get a PPP loan. I got the stimulus money, if you will, right? The free money that we all got, which is hilarious that our great grandkids will work and strive to pay back. They gave us 3%, and the rest went to other countries. Phil Scott's given not just us, but we've given trillions of dollars to Ukraine, right? We have people freezing to death on our streets in Vermont. Right? That's not okay. We have starving people and we're doing that, which, I like Vermont first. I have a heart. Here in Vermont State, same thing when you get into immigration. We just accepted 100 Afghan families, unvetted Afghan families to Bennington, right? Not people, families. So we talked about that housing crisis. Who do you think is going to get first dibs on these houses? You think it's going to be you? And now we have Ukraine coming in. And it's not that I don't have a heart. I care about these people too. But I just care about Vermonters more right now. We have to take care of our own before we start handing out, especially the amount of money that we're talking about. And again, that's racketeering. We've all been racketeered on a major level. I got a pocket park in Bennington, costs us $100,000. I can sit on the bench down there and Google it. And for $300, I can have one delivered the next day, right? We paid $3,000 as taxpayers, and we bought 3 of them. So we have $1,000 worth of benches. You paid 10 grand as the taxpayer, and that's one thing, that proverbial $25,000 government hammer. That's what we have. Unfortunately, your local officials, they're just price inflating. You can pick a town or state project and go through it. They count on no one looking, and you're going to see those $25,000 hammers all over the place, right? So that's what your local officials just straight up stealing your money. Law enforcement, I'll repeat, I back the blue. I'd actually give them more money because I believe in better equipment and training. But when they're not molesting our children, they're the ones that are distributing the drugs. And when you get to the judge and senator level, it's a giant land grab. The latest is a bike path. Doesn't matter what town you live in Vermont, you got a bike path coming through, right? That is a land grab, right? It's costing us $100 million to give away a giant strip of land for
Yeah,
a
the
quarter
Lamoille County Rail
mile
Trail is right here in Morrisville. I see they're building that out to basically run through the whole state.
everywhere. We got them here in Bennington too. So
Let me,
again,
let
for a
me,
quarter mile.
I got to
I mean,
stop you for a minute though, Kevin. You said you backed the blue, but you also
do.
said something about molesting children and
Correct.
selling drugs. Those two ideas seem to be at odds with each other.
Well, again, I back good cops. There's a whole bunch of great law enforcement, and they're the same, with our teachers. They got into it to help people and do stuff. And I know I'm friends, right, with a lot of law enforcement. But when you get to certain individuals like Chad Schmidt, the Bennington County Sheriff, we had a BOLO. That's a statewide issue. Be on the lookout for law enforcement, for my sheriff and my high bailiff. And the charges were human trafficking, drug trafficking, murder, and obstruction. Okay. So all of these things, again, we want to save this to the next topic, but all of these things that we've looked at, we're talking about the EIN numbers, that's illegal shell companies for money laundering. I don't think it's just your taxes. It all goes back to human trafficking. There's some very disturbing things going on in Vermont state, and a lot of our upper elite and our politicians are very, very connected to a lot of these things.
Well, let me ask you this in terms of how it pertains to cannabis, because right now the state is training new drug recognition experts to detect signs of impairment for cannabis. And it seems like, at least according to the consulting team the state hired through the Cannabis Control Board, this guy said there is no consensus on what impairment looks like across the board scientifically. And even the cop that was on the advisory committee said, we don't really know what impairment looks like. Do you think that we should be training cops to detect something when there is no scientific basis?
Now you're going to need a permit for that, buddy. You need a permit. We're talking about a fee. You're going to get in trouble, man. You're going to get a ticket. This is more money.
No, you're going to get a DUI. They're running
nonsense.
this. These cops are running the same test for DUI. They're going to run those exact same field sobriety tests on cannabis people.
Right. I like the one that's a 30-day blood test, right? So it doesn't work. That's what I said. There's no, it's ridiculous, Caleb, was my point there. This is another way to restrict you, to fine you, to oppress you, to get your money. This is all this is. It's just more laws. Let's make up some more stupid laws, especially firearms. We're talking about unconstitutional, illegal laws. Let's just pass them.
Well, in terms of cannabis, it seems like the state really loves to talk about data-driven results, but there is no data that shows that the same tests for the alcohol tests seem pretty reliable. At a certain point, if you drink enough, you're gonna fucking fall over. You're gonna start stumbling and slurring your words. But I could smoke joints all day and still drive straight as an arrow. And I think that the state has sort of just kind of they've lumped that in together without really any type of scientific justification.
They need to set a milestone. They need to put a limit somewhere so that they can tax you above and beyond that. And that's
here's
all
the
that
thing.
is.
That the number, some states have this number of 5 nanograms per milliliter, or some kind of concentration in your blood, but that number really doesn't tell you anything other than that's what's in your blood. It doesn't tell you if you're actually impaired by it.
Right. No, obviously you'd need some sort of a test that it's accurate and reliable before we start finding people. Maybe you're a little more careful, right? The whole idea again is ridiculous. in my opinion. And half of these things that we're talking about, most of the laws that are on the book are ridiculous laws, and it's just to get your money. I got to remove the junk car that's out beside my house, right? So it's been there, it's not registered, whatever it is. They give me a fine, I got to remove it. I hire a tow truck, and they stop me in the middle of the road because I didn't get a permit to move the car, right? And these are the same, again, government created problems, and then the solution or probation and parole. It's just another system. Once you get in at DCF, you get your kids in DCF, good luck getting them out, right? It's a heartache. They tie you to the system, the welfare system, welfare box, the political box, we're right back to boxes, man. So think outside the box. And I know, as far as I'm concerned, I don't comply anymore. I'm doing me, right? I see them breaking every law, rules, regulations, mandates, law, the Constitution. Those are for me and you, buddy. Those are for people. Congress does what they want with impunity, right? Diplomatic immunity. Like I could see any one of them winning any kind of immunity idol. But
So,
that's what they claim.
so
Right?
how do they, to your point here, and I feel very much the same way. Like, I'm not a big fan of rules and shit. But like,
You need
when you
some.
see people violating these rules, how do they
Yeah.
expect everyone else to sort of fall in line?
Right. Again, we talk firearms. Christopher Bates from Chicago, he was my opponent, right? I have a court order that says I can't say his name. I just violated my court order, right? I can't talk about him. I can't print about it, even though he violates federal gun rules while passing gun control for Vermonters,
Was
right?
he the guy you posted a picture of shooting a fucking AR-15?
Yeah, that was actually a military issue M16 and a full auto one at that. We have video of him doing
I
that.
remember
And
that.
that was 5 days after he fled the state of Illinois with a warrant and a bounty and conditions of release saying he couldn't leave the state of Illinois
Do you
or
have
keep
that
the
paperwork?
firearm. What's that?
Do you have that paperwork?
Oh, absolutely.
I'd love to
Yeah,
see that.
he was convicted for the, felony with injury. And again, multiple batteries on women and law enforcement and DUIs, and held his wife hostage with a shotgun, punched his sister in the face. He had a warrant and a bounty when they appointed him. He didn't win because I did an election on it. When they appointed him to office in 2018. And oh,
Wow.
by the way, that's called a mistrial, right? A fugitive can't hold just judgment on other people. We had a fugitive on the highest jury in Vermont state. So the full term abortions and higher taxes and more gun control and all the crap they just passed since 2018 forward, I don't think any of it's any good. But they don't want to talk to me about that either. So we'll have to wait till I get in there and we'll see.
We got a couple more here, Kevin. What's left?
Sure.
Farms and food,
Farms and food.
some environmental shit.
Farms is big. We're not done with cannabis because there's another part of cannabis we need to talk about, and farms is a good lead into that. And we're talking about hemp. Okay, so on the subject of farms, let's start with, I think we need to reevaluate how we feed the world. And I'm talking about our weaponized poison food system. 85% of all the stuff that you buy today wasn't available 20 years ago. We're talking about GMO, we're talking about these horrible things that we eat in our processed foods every single day. So I like happy cows and happy pigs and happy chickens, grass-fed, pasture-raised, organic food. I think that's one of the great reasons Vermont farms are going to shine. We have to deregulate them. We have to de-tax them. We have to give our farmers a chance. And I think food is a pretty good use for our farms. I'd like to see a few more of them open back up. Another big
Kevin, I'm
part.
going to stop you right there because
Sure.
I'm not a huge fan of deregulation, but it seems like in the area of agriculture, some of these farmers have been sort of over-regulated and red taped into bankruptcy.
Right. The last time they found fecal coliform in Lake Champlain, they blamed our farmers. Right. Right now, because of the green energy that they've already passed, that's another scam. Right. You can't grow corn because the carbon footprint's too big, and you can't have cows because cows fart. Right. They're trying to get rid of these things. Like we never had any of these problems before. I just told you Lake Champlain's issue. It's not the cows. They blamed our farmers and they just about killed them. They put them out of existence because of the problem they created. So, again, our farmers, they're the lifeblood of America. They feed us. I love our farmers, especially Vermont farms. We have little tiny, quaint, beautiful farms. And again, I think that is going to explode. And then the other piece is hemp, right? A lot of our farms, what happened here in Vermont state and across the nation is you got into trouble with farms because of taxes and regulations. You couldn't hold on anymore. So eventually you had to go to the bank and the government and you said, man, I don't know what to do. This is an 8-generation family farm. Like, I don't want to lose that. And the government said, oh, don't worry, right? All you got to do is be a little bit bigger farm. But we have all the subsidy in the world for you. Here it is, right? That's government welfare. And they kept on ramping that up. The next thing you know, we got our Vermont farmers driving $1 million tractor. That's not farming anymore. You guys were set up and then taken down accordingly by the same government, right? And they should be ashamed of that. And I want to deregulate that. So a lot of people, what happened when we legalized cannabis, they switched over to hemp. And a lot of people grew a lot of hemp last year. And guess what? At the end of the year, we had a lot of barns filled with rotting hemp because they didn't have anywhere to put it. So I want to
didn't have the manufacturing capacity, the processing capacity to deal with all that.
You just hit it. So I've already talked to people. I have, not only the ideas, but I have the manufacturers lined up for more jobs having to do with hemp. I want to give our farmers a crop that they can make money off of, right? And this started with a woman that makes armor out of hemp, right? We're going to be making that right here in Vermont state. We're already talking about opening up a manufacturer.
Armor, what, like armor. Kevlar?
Like Kevlar, bulletproof armor made
out of hemp.
Out of hemp. And again, more than that, I want to make lumber. Some of the lumber they make is absolutely beautiful and it's astonishing. Again, it's 10 times stronger, it's 10 times lighter, 10 times more fire retardant.
I've also seen hemp concrete.
50 times cheaper. Hempcrete is another big one. The construction industry in general is big. And now we're talking about making lumber without cutting down any trees. I hope all the college save the planet people are listening.
And hemp grows so much faster than trees.
Right. And as far as the loggers, because I love loggers too in Vermont state, right? It doesn't completely eliminate that industry. There's still going to be people that
couldn't those loggers transition into that industry?
Well, I think they're going to, and that's the other piece. We've got lots and lots of jobs. I want to make rope, I want to make lumber, I want to make hempcrete. We can make steel.
How about
airplanes?
How about hemp packaging for all of these cannabis products that are now going to hit the market?
Biodegradable, absolutely. And then the same thing, I've seen sneakers, right? And durable, they last 100 times longer. And go back to the spiritual piece, because a lot of politicians, I think, are missing that spiritual piece in grounding with Mother Earth, with Gaia, right? That's why we have rubber on the bottom of our sneakers. You're not allowed to ground with the earth. So any of the spiritual weirdos out there like me that are trying to get in contact with, God and the earth, hemp sneakers is right up that alley.
Are you a religious man, Kevin?
Suppress us. What's that?
Are you a religious man?
Yeah, but that's changed. My biggest growth in the last 5 years has been spiritual, and I'm running for governor, right? I just said at the beginning, I ran from both religion and politics, but I think by finding all of the bad things, the devil, and all the things that have been done to us, I actually found God. I became a Huna about a month and a half ago, and a Huna is kind of like a spiritual shaman. I don't know how to. Huna means secret, and as in the secret cultural wisdoms and knowledge that's been handed down over generations has been destroyed. Cancel culture on a major level. Again, this is on purpose. I think a lot of this ancient religions and ancient wisdoms have been destroyed. So, that's what it's like. A spiritual shaman is the way to describe a Huna.
Here's a great question to throw in there. How do you feel about psychedelics?
So again, medically, I think there's a lot of research that we need to look into, right? All these things our government told us was no good for us. A lot of them, it's obvious that they're not, or they all have side effects. But I think there's some amazing things that they're doing with psychedelics. And you're talking about not just like mushrooms, but ayahuasca, right? And the other things. I've seen lots of different really tough medical things that have seen improvement with these, right? So I don't know not enough about it, Caleb, to really speak to any grounds, and I'd leave that for the medical professionals. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think we need to explore that and develop that.
And I see now they're using ketamine in trials to treat veterans with PTSD, which boy, when I was growing up in DARE class, they said the drugs are bad, and now they're like, hey, why don't you try a little puff of this they're like nasal inhalants that you just squirt up your nose,
Right.
and they're doing trials with veterans, and with great success, it appears.
Well, it happens all over again. Those same officials, right, the professionals that want to redevelop and establish their own guidelines for the use. You know, they want all these statistics and data that you were talking about is not there, right? But at the same time, absolutely, we can trace. You know, they've used cannabis for anxiety and depression in Egypt 5,000 years ago. What do you mean? There's
I
no
also use that just now for that.
yeah. Well, and that's these things that we haven't been allowed. I mean, think of what cannabis and all the uses we just talked about. We're making airplanes out of hemp, right? It's lighter than aluminum and stronger than steel. A goose doesn't take out a hemp airplane, right? They just made one in Canada, and they're even using the fuel, right?
No
It's
shit.
burning hemp oil to burn it. So
Wow.
what does it do to the lumber industry, the paper industry, no wonder this has been suppressed for so long, because the hemp didn't have a lobby.
And that is one of the big arguments, is that, you know, the paper industry really helped push prohibition forward because they were worried about their bottom line.
Yeah, no, they should be. But we're gonna, you know, just like a lot of these conversations we're having nowadays, we've never been able to have them, these taboo conversations, right? But now we are. So I think now is the time, and it's ridiculous that we haven't taken advantage of hemp. Like I said, it was the #1 cash cow before. I just want to make sure that the politicians, the greedy politicians, don't get their hands on it again. I want to leave it with the people.
How do we help manufacturers and processors get set up here in Vermont?
Well, again, that's something that I've already developed. In fact, it gets a lot more exciting. We kind of saved the best for last. But these same people, we're talking about powering your house and your car with air, H2O, right? This is the basic beginning of free energy. We're not only talking about these, you know, unrealistic, crazy fantasy ideas for decades now. I'm actually, you know, in contact with the patent holders, the developers, and the manufacturers, right? The problem here in this situation, just like in a lot of other situations, I can't tell you any names right now. I can't even name businesses because the government is against this guy. In a lot of situations, we have all these patents and controlled great technologies that have been kept from the people, and it's a money issue. They need money to develop it, to manufacture it. That's not even the case here. This guy has everything all lined up. The only problem is the government wants to kill him. So as a governor, as a candidate for governor, I think Vermont's going to be the state that unleashes air power, right? Not just your firearms, but your car and your house. I think it's going to come out of Vermont state. We've got a generator that runs on air. You can plug your car or your house into it and run for 25 years,
No shit.
right? What's that do for everything? You know, we didn't finish up on the bike path either, because there's an important part of that. It's all over again, a half-mile strip of property, hundreds of miles long, all through Vermont state. It's being done by VTrans, Vermont Transit. Okay. People should ask why. And it's because they've already passed the green energy scan, right? You're the problem. You're made of carbon. So we're going to reduce carbon emissions here in Vermont state by 80%. That's already passed, right? Well, I like deer, so I'd like to keep a few deer. We have trees, that's carbon, your carbon, right? If that's the 20%. Everything else, I mean, they've already banned gas-powered cars in California, right? Now they're talking about
That
that
doesn't seem to be going well.
here, no, it's not. And who thinks it's a good idea to hook our entire transportation system up to our already failing electrical grid? Governor,
Well,
again, it's more
I tried to
scam.
tell people this, Kevin, when Joe Biden was elected as Secretary of Energy. Is from Michigan and already had a number of contracts with electric car charging companies.
Right.
And, you know, she fucked up.
Conflict.
Obama gave her a bunch of contracts during his sort of green initiatives, and over half of them went absolutely nowhere. And a lot of money just died in Michigan.
Governor Scott, we don't even have to go that far. he just bought a pickup truck, right? He's got an electric pickup. I think he just bought 9 electric buses for us at the low price of $12 million. How much you think that went into their pocket? And is that worth it, guys?
Jesus.
Really? And let me think, how do we charge them? Where's that power come from?
Hmm.
They're burning
And,
coal, or some of them are hooked
and
right up to a diesel generator.
right, you know,
It's not
generating electricity still burns fossil fuels for a
absolutely.
large percentage of the electricity that we produce in the United States.
And a lot of this, again, above and beyond the RICO, which is bad enough, a lot of the bigger dogs like Governor Scott, it's my belief that, he should be tried, and I think he's going to, for high treason and sedition. They've done a lot of foreign corruption and currency. We've got pictures with Wan Ping is the guy's name. That's the consul general for the Chinese Communist Party, right? We didn't get this from American news, but it was listed under the New York delegate out of Taiwan. A friend in Taiwan sent this to me. We've got Phil Scott, David Zuckerman, and James Condos meeting with Wan Ping exclusively alone. And that's all of your, a lot of that's the green energy stuff, not
Well,
just
and a lot of
Dominion.
I know that Peter Shulman, just from my reading of the EB5 files, was also him and Ariel Kuros were meeting with a lot of Chinese investors, trying to bring them into the EB5 program.
And if you look at the big picture, that's the problem for a lot of these guys. Again, not just Vermont state, but nationally. They've conspired with a foreign government against our own. And again, here in Vermont state, it's wind power or solar power, right? Solar power, it's the same people that own the oil companies, right? Wind power, that's a huge one in Vermont, all these wind turbines. If you really want to look at carbon emissions, one of the biggest contributors is the making of concrete. So do you know how much cement goes into a wind farm? So we're going to clear cut the top of a mountain, right? And then we're going to put a giant slab of concrete there. And while that's going on the other end of the country, we're going to burn coal really, really hot, hot enough to melt steel. And we're going to make the components and ship them across country on fossil burning trucks. Top of the mountain on fossil fuel trucks. We're going to put them up with fossil fuel burning cranes or fossil fuel burning helicopters. And we're going to put all that up. And if we're lucky, we get 20 years out of it.
Well, and also
We
the
spent-
mining operation, say, for the minerals that you need to make solar panels, those mining operations
Lithium.
or electric vehicles, cobalt, lithium, those mining operations are very, I want to say
devastating.
destructive. Yeah, destructive to the environment.
For every wind turbine, you need raw earth, enough raw earth that basically you kill 1,000 acres. And it's so bad, it's so devastated, it's never coming back. That's for one turbine. I just made a pilgrimage across country. I drove to Colorado and back. They've got hundreds of thousands of these wind mines. So again, one engine, 1,000 acres, that's never coming back. I want the Greenpeace people to think about that, because again, this is a scam. Do you remember the Industrial Revolution? We tried everything from steam to nukes, and what we landed on was fossil fuel. It's the cleanest, most efficient, best way to use to power anything. Ethanol, it's not as clean, it's not as effective. When you put that stuff in your small engines and cars, it destroys it. They wanted to run ethanol pipelines from the farmland into the cities, and they can't because they don't have pipes. They don't have pipes strong enough that won't corrode for the ethanol. What's it doing to your car, right? Same thing. So any other way it's not as clean, it's not as efficient. We found that balance in fossil fuels. But the good news is Governor Kevin just told you about air power. We're going to use air instead. And that's my firm belief. And again, they've already gotten patents, they've already got it. Manufacturers are lined up. We're going to do that out of Vermont state if I get my way, along with the hemp. Again, we're talking about tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of jobs and a bright, brilliant future for Vermont that's going to carry us a long, long ways. We're going to have a huge return, and again, happy cows, chickens, and pigs. So all over, I think it's a win-win. I've never agreed with a politician 100% until now, and that's because it's me. So I hope people don't agree with me. I hope you take a look at my policies and tell me where I went wrong. Tell me how to make great policy better. That's how it's supposed to be done, right? I am open. I'm pretty set in my ways, and I'll sit down with you and tell you specifically how I got to these conclusions in my life, and I'll listen to yours too. It's going to take a lot to change my mind. I haven't wavered. My positions, my belief system, my values have been the same since I've been a little kid, right? Nothing majorly traumatic has happened in my life, and I still have the same core values now as I had as a kid. And it's going to go right back to I'm a Vermonter. I'm a regular
Well,
guy.
I suspect, Kevin, if you were going to get pushback on anything you've said here today, it would be on the critical race theory and on the transgender thing. The
Right.
rest of what you said, I feel like it is fucking reasonable, man. I mean, um, I've seen the way you sort of get dismissed in the Vermont media here, and it is frustrating. It's frustrating to me, even though I agree with them on occasion. Like, you can be kind of a confrontational prick, and I understand why they don't want to talk to you, but I don't think that's a good reason to not talk to you.
I got that reputation out of tenacity. And unfortunately, what happened is, what do you do as a citizen? I found 60 to 70% fraud. We got hundreds of names, right? That's a very serious issue. So I took it to my officials, and I found money laundering and embezzlement and like corruption like you wouldn't believe. And I took it to my officials, and
I
I
would
found out,
believe.
well, my officials, I found out they were complicit. And what happened is they were ignoring it. And at the same time, I was giving it to you guys, and you laughed at me because it sounds crazy, right? My sheriff, human trafficking, what, right? Unless you know, I'm a part of it, right? I'm not going to come on here and lie. In fact, I've been doing this for 5 years. Do you think I'd be here if this was a lie? Would you sue me for defamation if you were the
Someone
sheriff?
that was a point
I
I was
would.
going to make, Kevin. Someone for sure would have sued you by now,
You think so?
because you run
Instead,
your
they
mouth an
run.
awful lot, and if some of that was false, they could easily file a lawsuit against you.
Believe me, the public knows maybe 20 or 30% of what I know. And before I say anything publicly, and again, it's not always my free will too. I'd rather get it right than be right. So I'm limited as to what I can tell the
And
people.
I
But if
know
I
people
put
who have
anything,
been I know people who have been threatened with lawsuits who have said things that are far less accusatory than the things you're saying. So it does
right,
kind of surprise me that you have not been sued for slander or
if I
defamation or
say it
something.
publicly, I'm prepared. I've got the backup, and that's why you're not seeing that. And you can see that, I got a no trespass order from my select board, Bennington Select Board, right? Which is
Is
funny.
that
This is
legal? So you can't go to a select board meeting?
Well, they delivered the no trespass order, right? So I couldn't go to my select board meeting. And my first stop, I told the officer who delivered it, I'll see you next Tuesday, and we talked about it for a long time. It's all on live video. But the next day I went down to I went to the Bennington police station, and I said, look, they're pinching you guys. So now you have a choice. You can listen to an unconstitutional order and your boss, because the police work for the municipality, or you follow your oath and the Constitution, right? You're pinched, right? So I'm going to go defend you guys. I want somebody to come with me, but there's nobody available. That happens a lot with my police department because again, we got some bad apples there, in my opinion. So then I went over to the town office and saw Stuart Hurd, the Bennington town manager, and basically just told him I was good with his plan. Like I'm cool with this. I can't wait. I'm going to be there next Thursday. Tuesday, whatever it was. I just want to make sure you're aware because when you arrest me, if you do that, it makes me a defendant, and then I'm entitled to discovery, and I'm going to put you on the stand under oath, and I'm going to ask you some really tough questions. So just want to let you know, thanks, and I'm good with it. And I thanked him and left. And the next day, the police came and rescinded the trespass order.
Have you
So
ever
that's
been
why.
arrested while you're out there doing your work?
No, I haven't because despite popular belief, I'm pretty civil. I talk to them just like I'm talking to you
No,
right
you
now,
came
and
to my house,
they
man,
run.
and I had heard a lot about you before you came up here, and you showed up, and I thought we had a fucking really nice time hanging out, smoked a little
I
herb.
think I'm a good guy. I'm always right
I
too.
thought your
Just
woman
ask
was
me.
very kind. I really like her.
Yeah,
Peace to Vivian. Yeah, word up. And
right.
I for everything I'd heard about you before then, I thought it was kind of overblown.
Right. And Vivian's a great, I mean, she's she's my campaign manager. She's my
You
support.
need
She's my,
someone like that, Kevin.
yes. And again, as far as, romantically, I'm officially a single man, but Vivian is invaluable to me. And it's not just her. Val Hood is another one. I mean, even you, Caleb, I've seen you step up. This is so much bigger, not for me personally, but for Vermonters. That's what this is about. Vermont strong. We're all in this together, and you don't even have to be a Vermonter to be a part of that, right? This is about doing the right thing in the service of others, I think is help. And, you're winning right now without trying to win. And I love that rhythm. I said before, I don't want this job, but I think I'm qualified. I think I got the policies and I've accepted it and I'm ready to step up and do it. Right. And I do think I had a chance, unlike Peter Duvall. 2020, I raised a total of $250. That was checks I couldn't send back to people because I did an audit and I knew it was a rigged system. So I spent a total of $700 compared to Governor Scott's 1.6 million. I came in
Yes.
third, and I think I'm about to arrest number one and number two. So I think we got a pretty good shot this year. And frankly, the other side, both sides, the top Republican, the top Democrat, are so far removed from your everyday average person.
Who's the top
And
Democrat? Brenda Siegel?
Right. She's another, again, the
I'm
crowd
trying to get
favorite.
her on. I met her at the Zuckerman event that we went to.
I thought we were going to be able to have a discussion, at that debate. She was scheduled for that candidate debate we had with Channel 17. And Governor Scott canceled an hour after I signed up, but Brenda waited until an hour before the debate and she canceled. And, again, back to fair, free elections. I believe Brenda Segal and Governor Scott want free, fair elections. You guys should ask them.
And I really think Brenda Siegel and you would have some common ground in terms of drug policy.
I think we all do. Again, I'm not sure, about Brenda specifically, but there's no Democrats and Republicans. Most of my friends are Democrats, right? I'm a Vermonter. It's just the way they fall.
No.
But the truth is we have a scale, and over here, Republican ultimate control, we got you on lockdown and it's socialism,
Nope. You're breaking up a little, Kevin. Uh-oh. You can't break up now.
Abortion.
Whoa,
That's a great one.
You broke up a little there, Kevin. I lost you for about the last 20 seconds.
All right. Well, I was going to say, I'm getting a note too. It says my connection is unstable.
Okay.
I was
we
going
got
to
about
just mention.
Look, Kevin, we got 8 minutes here. This has been, I got to get going. My girlfriend's giving me angry looks. I got a big fucking joint here we got to smoke, but I always, first of all, I want to thank you for your time and your conversation here. And I always leave the last word for my guests. So you got 7 minutes here. Anything we've missed or anything you'd like to add, this is all you right now. Kevin Hoyt, independent governor candidate. Thank you very much, man.
No, thanks for having me. And, I want to thank you on top of that, Caleb. You're stepping up and I'm watching it. These hills are filled with brave Vermonters, right? And I hope people are finally done watching this happen. We're natural observers. We're quiet, tolerant people. We've got a really long fuse. We mind our own business, essentially, right? Until it's on our doorstep. And I think it's on our doorstep. So I hope everybody steps up. The truth is I'm not going to get any help out of the media or the man. So I'm not expecting it. And again, we're in a rigged system, right? So rather than fight over criminal seats that nobody really wants in a rigged system, I figured we'll just arrest them all. And then we'll get back to arguing about politics afterwards. I think I got some great policies for the people of Vermont, a government for the people, by the people. Can you even imagine what a great thing? And I'll end with term limits, right? I am pro term limits. We got to make sure this accumulation of wealth and power never happen again. I don't see them voting themselves out of a job ever. I think the only way to get that done is executive order, and I'm prepared to make that executive order, just like I'm prepared to make them repeal the unconstitutional gun laws, just like I'm make them stand accountable for all these crimes and suppression they've done against you, Vermonters, which are the best part of Vermont, right? Best people on earth. So thanks for having me, brother.
Kevin Hoyt, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. And I wish you the best of luck. And I want you to remember my comments. you're going in too aggressive with some of these people. Take a softer approach, and I
Well,
think you
I
can have better
tried,
luck.
Caleb. I tried. I mean, honestly, I gotta respond to that a little bit because I did that for so long. And I wonder what people expect of me when I've given it to you've all done that. You've been to the police, you've been to the hospital, you've been to the judge, and you got screwed. We've all been screwed by the system, right? So I did this the 100% absolute best way that I could, the legal way, the calm way, the paperwork way, and I'm still doing that. And I got no results. The only difference now is I'm doing it live. You know, we talked about David Zuckerman's pig roast, right? Some people would say he is my opponent. That's a far left guy, right? Why about tickets to his pig roast? Because I wanted to bring this to them. Right? They won't respond to me. They keep ignoring it. There's
Well,
never a proper venue to talk
like
to
I was
any
saying,
of your
Kevin,
officials.
remember when we sat down for lunch there, and
Yeah.
and I came back and I said, "Boy, I've got 4 interviews since we've been here," and you said,
Right.
"How the fuck do you do that?" And I just want you to keep that in the back of your mind. You might have
Well,
gone a
I
little.
interview them. I don't need them anymore. I don't want that system. You know, Phil Scott and Sleepy Joe, President Corn Pop, they can keep it. They can keep the election system, the tax system, education, judicial, medical, whatever. That I want to govern the new system, right? Which is, I believe, where we're going.
But do
And
you
it's
think it's
with you
important
guys.
to understand your competition in order to maybe get out in front of them?
Well, I think I do. I think I'm arresting them instead, right? That's why they're running. And that's the remarkable part. You know, the power of one, the book of one, the law of one, where we go one, we go all. That one is you. Whoever this is, whoever's watching the show right now, your mom was right. You're a very special person. You got to remember who you are. You're a Vermonter.
My
So
mom might be
stand up.
watching.
Well, again, stand up for yourself, stand up for your friends and your neighbors, your loved one. Share these messages, warn these people, talk to them, right? And the truth is, I think this is coming regardless. So when you see me going to my select board or the sheriff or the court or all these confrontations you're talking about, the Zuckerman pig roast, I'm not expecting answers. I don't expect them to go, "Oh, you're right, Kevin. We've been stealing money from everybody." They can't, right? They're not going to do that. Those are specifically for you guys, so you can see it. Vermont Diggers having a debate 2 days from now, and they're only allowing you to see 2 out of 5 candidates. Are you cool with that? Right? You shouldn't be. You deserve to know what all 5 candidates. I'm not here saying, "Hey, I want a Kevin Hoyt show," like I just did with
Right, but you've
Caleb.
got all
Thank
your
you, buddy.
signatures and you filed all your paperwork, right?
I did it. There's a tremendous amount of work, effort, time, energy, money, everything that goes into this.
So
I believe that I'm due.
why wouldn't they have you on the stage? It seems like there's really a push to keep third parties off of debate stages.
Well, it's not just third parties. It's me specifically. Absolutely.
Well,
And if you
I
want to know
think
why, you got to watch the debate with Peter Duvall. That's why, because Phil Scott is afraid of me. He is afraid of what I'm going to say, right? And that I have policy. I have actual solid with teeth policy. I've got manufactured armor out of hemp. We're going to make lumber out of hemp. We're going to make Vermont proud, right? We should be proud. Like I said, Vermont, the best part of Vermont is Vermonters. And we got to give some of this government back to them. We got to cut our government so that we can afford it. That's as simple as it gets. So your girlfriend's going to kill you, Caleb.
no,
Thanks for having me.
that was a
I
great
appreciate it.
closing note. We got to make Vermont affordable for
Okay.
Vermonters. It's been a pleasure, Kevin, and I really best of luck out there on the trails. Stay safe,
Thank you.
please.
All right.
Tell
Peace
Vivian
out.
I said hello.
Okay. See ya.